All right. Hi, everyone. Give it a few more minutes for everyone to move from the waiting room to the main room. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all for attending today's NAPSA Scam Advice Forum. I'm Esther Thorpe, the Administrative Project Coordinator with NAPSA, and I'm very happy to welcome you on today's forum. For those of you who are not aware, NAPSA, or the National Adult Protective Services Association, is a nonprofit membership organization that exists to provide training, advocacy, and networking opportunities for APS workers, allied professionals, victims of abuse, and anyone interested in preventing and raising awareness for elder and adult abuse. Please visit our website, napsa-now.org, to learn more about us and become a member. The monthly National Scam Advice Forum we're here for today is organized by Debbie Dean, a retired victim specialist for the FBI, and Steve Baker, who is retired from the FTC and the Better Business Bureau. Membership with NAPSA is encouraged but not required to be part of this group and attend these forums. All listeners have been muted, but we do encourage you to ask your questions in the chat box. And after the presentation, we'll also um, allow everyone to unmute themselves and just join the conversation. All right, so I will go ahead and kick it off to Debbie and Steve.
Um, yeah, well, good morning. And this is an interesting topic. Turns out there's just been, this has actually been in the news just this week, so it's actually fairly timely. So, our topic today is timeshares and what to do about timeshares. And there's also those of you subscribed to the Baker Fraud Report will have seen a couple of links to some cases involving crooked timeshare guys just this morning. We've all been, everybody's been on vacation. We've probably all been approached to attend a timeshare presentation at one point or another of our lives. If you've gone on any vacation, any resort area, there are people out there hitting you up, offering free rounds of golf or other prizes if you attend their timeshare presentation, which they insist is going to do it. If you do, and I sat in on one time where they said there was like no pressure and fine if I didn't buy a timeshare afterwards. Of course, they are very high pressure and they really want you to buy and they want you to buy on the spot. Um, and a lot of people really regret this. This timeshare, there's all different kinds of timeshares. They're organized in the American Resort Development Association, which reports that 9.9 million people own a timeshare. And particularly, people are getting along in life or a little bit older are the people that have purchased them, and so you're likely to run across this with APS. The industry claims it's as big as Major League Baseball, so there's a lot of money in this involved. There's also travel clubs, etc. The big distinction between different kinds of timeshares is sometimes people take a mortgage to purchase these things, and that has different circumstances than people just buy them outright. What happens is that after you buy them, you have to pay maintenance fees. But people, as they get older, often can't really afford to visit the timeshare anymore. So there's the travel costs. There's also annual maintenance fees, which can go up, which can be significant. So the result is you've got a massive number of people out there that have got timeshares they really don't want, they really can't use anymore, and they want to get rid of. And unfortunately, there's really not that much of a resale market for timeshares. So people are fairly desperate. A lot of timeshares are offered for sale, for example, on eBay for like $1, and they still can't sell them. So obviously, crooks have noticed all of this, and there are a couple of different kinds of scams involving people that own timeshares we're going to talk about today. One is timeshare resale fraud. I'm going to start with that, and then timeshare exit fraud, which you've doubtless heard about on the radio or on TV commercials. And so timeshare resale fraud, a case we did when I was the Federal Trade Commission, involved an operation in Fort Lauderdale. They were calling people who had timeshares. A lot of people who had them and wanted to sell them had posted them for sale online, so they were able to locate these people and reach out to them. It was a telemarketing fraud. They would call people and say, "Look, you got a timeshare. I've got a buyer. They're willing to pay full price, just what you ask for the timeshare, but we need $3,000 up front for closing costs and other expenses. But don't worry about that because it will be returned at the closing." Um, then they used a fake contract that they sent to people, and they used a variety of different business names and mail drops to get the information from. Well, it was a very simple scam. They didn't have any sellers. They got your money and they just kept it. And you couldn't ever get hold of them to figure this out. Turned out from talking to the FBI agent, and these guys were subsequently um, uh, prosecuted criminally. Obviously, the Federal Trade Commission didn't have criminal authority. These were real New Jersey mob guys, names like Joey the Pants, whatever. And they apparently hung out at a strip club where they had their own, the bada bing room where they could hang out. I think some of the FBI surveillance, they told me they even saw the guys who were running this particular scam having dinner with some of the cast members of The Sopranos. And so it was a big time there. There were a lot of these things in the United States. The FTC did a big sweep and later on against companies that were doing this and sued dozens of these companies. Since then, I'm not really heard about these operations being located in the United States. Instead, they seem to have migrated to Mexico. Anybody that goes on vacation to Puerto Vallarta or Cancun, a lot of people have bought timeshares in Mexico, and so the it's kind of strange. Really have never seen telemarketing boiler rooms located in Mexico, except timeshare resale. And again, they call people are previous timeshare owners, often offer to have somebody who wants to buy their timeshare or rent them at a hefty price. You got to pay some money up front. There is no buyer, and your money is just lost. They become fairly complicated. I know for years they were claiming an association with the Minnesota Department of Commerce. It was making the Department of Commerce nuts because obviously they hadn't approved this thing, and they're using a lot of mail drops in the United States and also a lot of legal documents supposedly from Profeca, which is the Mexican Consumer Protection Agency, or supposed Mexican um, taxing authorities. And so they're producing very official looking documents and claim that taxes need to be paid on these things, for example. And this was really, really bad. A couple of years ago, there were reports in the news, which I think Debbie has included with her resource list, where um, 8 bodies were found cut up and put in plastic bags by the side of the road. And these were people who had been forced to work at this timeshare sale thing and apparently had been escaped and had been executed. So this was, by all accounts, this was being done by the Jalisco drug cartel, which so there's organized crime folks certainly know consumer fraud as well. On August 25 of this year, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned the Jalisco drug cartel in Puerto Vallarta as a foreign terrorist, claimed they were being fined, and over these timeshare resale scams. And earlier this week, a woman was arrested for her part in a scheme that called timeshare owners. Um, uh, um, Told them that there had been some sort of class action involving the timeshare, that the victim was going to get some money out of that, but had to get some money upfront to pay for this supposed class action settlement. Um, this money went to drug gangs in California after the money was laundered in Mexico, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, etc. And it took in $30 million. And then just yesterday, there's a link in the today's fraud report. There were 15 more arrests of this around the country from this same gang that took in like $30 million. So long and short of it is anybody that tells you they've got a buyer for the timeshare or somebody that wants to rent a timeshare for a large thing and they want you to send money up front is almost certainly a crook. And again, I think it's likely that you're going to find clients who are in this situation. So that's timeshare resale. There's other variations, of course, on this. Sometimes they want to claim they want to rent your timeshare for a Super Bowl party or that sort of thing, or on behalf of a corporation. But again, anybody that wants you to pay up front is probably a crook. The other aspect of these are timeshare resale. And again, as I noticed, you probably heard about these on the radio or seen commercials for them. Again, you've got a large number of older people who would like to unload these timeshares, and people will reach out and tell them they can help them unload it. Now, there's no inherent reason why you couldn't have somebody offer a service of helping people get out of their timeshares. You would think people will be able to do this themselves. The timeshare industry is obviously a little reluctant to have people just opt out. Um, so it's hard to get out on your own. If you call and try to get out of a timeshare, um, they will often try to offer you an enticement of additional weeks or points or something like that. But there is an exit program through the American Resort Development Association, the ARDA, that's supposed to help people get out of timeshares. And the actual legitimate resort industry says that they will not deal with timeshare exit companies that claim to get you out of your timeshare. Um, so this industry is, so what do they really do? There's several sorts of fraud that we regularly see that want a lot of money up front to perform services. For example, credit repair, student debt negotiation, people that claim that tax relief companies that all collect a lot of money up front and often don't actually follow through on some of those situations, student loans, mortgage modification scams, credit repair. There's actually now federal and often state laws that deal with those situations and prohibit them from charging any money up front. There's not any sort of law on that for 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 timeshare resale. And it's the Adult American Resort and Development Association, or ARDA, again, is the industry group that handles this. So these timeshare exit people contact people again, sometimes online. They can get other lists of people that are timeshare owners to reach out to and try to sell a timeshare to. And so sometimes they advertise on the radio, have you call them. Again, you've all heard the commercials for them, I'm sure. There are other groups that send mailings and invite people to an in-person seminar in their area uh, at a local facility where they can can pitch them on selling their timeshare exit services. Now, interestingly, some of these people that are selling timeshare exit people are people that were earlier in their careers involved in selling timeshares. So these in-person presentations end up being a lot of the same high pressure thing, and dealt full of false claims, and end up making it. So what sort of claims do they make to people, um, for these things? Well, often there's 100% money back guarantee, which they put in writing, but they don't honor it unless there's under pressure from law enforcement, and then so the guarantee really isn't any good, and the companies just linger on for a little bit before declaring bankruptcy. One of the things for at least in-person timeshare sales is the FTC's cooling off rule is applies to that. So you're supposed to give people a 3-day right to cancel, which obviously these people don't want to do. There's also state laws on right to cancel that people should be aware of, and I'm sure you do. And there are other state laws on timeshare sales, that are initial sales. Um, the other thing that's common on these things is for these companies to claim an affiliation with the American Resort Development Association or the Better Business Bureau, claiming they're Better Business Bureau members even if they're not. And so false affiliation claims give them more sense of things than anything. Interestingly, a lot of people, one of the claims that they pretty commonly make is that if you don't get rid of this timeshare, if something happens to you, your heirs, your children are going to get stuck with this timeshare, whether they want it or not. And that is pretty persuasive to some older people because they don't want to leave a burden for the next generation. Turns out, in fact, that's not true. You don't have to accept an inheritance of any sort of real property, whether it's a timeshare or whatever, and you simply have to file a disclaimer of interest with the court as some sort of probate situation, and you're not going to be stuck with this thing anymore. But that's a very common um, thing for these people. In addition, they tell people to quit making payments on the mortgage or the maintenance fees for their timeshare, and to stop talking to the resort. So people get way behind, and they have paid a lot of money, sometimes $10,000, $15,000, to the exit company that's supposedly going to do this. And then if they stop making their payments, they continue to those continue to accrue, and so people are even further behind in debt at the end of these things, because when they really do try to get out of them, again, there's more money owed, and they need to get out of that. What do these people actually do? A lot of them simply, if you've got a simple timeshare that there's no mortgage on, they will call the resort impersonating the consumer and say, gee, Fred Jones has got this timeshare. I'm Fred Jones. I want to get out of this timeshare. And there's a small fee to get out of it, and it's not too difficult. If there's a mortgage involved, it's very difficult to get out of it. They've clearly got a right to do it. And also, these unpaid fees people get behind on can appear on their credit reports and can uh, really crash credit report ratings for people. So it's the so what do these people do? Like I said, really often not very much. They're taking a lot of money. As you're familiar with other kind of crooks, they spend the money as it comes in, often pay it out to the owners, and they don't want to spend money on the actual work that would have to be done to legitimately get people out of their timeshares. Um, so like I said, I won't say that all timeshare exit people are crooks, but there's sure a whole lot of them. I'm outside St. Louis, and Branson, Missouri, which many of you may be familiar with, was a nest of dozens of these operations. And a lot of the, like I said, were people that started out selling timeshares in Branson, and now they're selling timeshare exits, and they simply copied one another's models. Employees from one fraud operation after it failed would simply segue into another company doing exactly the same sort of thing. These companies use a lot of different names. Often they change names fairly frequently. And one of the problems that creates, if you try to check them out in advance and go to the Better Business Bureau, is they haven't tied all these operations together. They've got different addresses, different websites, different phone numbers, even if it's the same people doing exactly the same thing in exactly the same location. So it is a real problem. Again, I think this is something that you're going to run across. This costs people a lot of money, and it's really a fraud. So that's uh, a really quick synopsis. I'm going to stop there and take your questions, or see, or have you share your experiences if you've come across this. I've got one question: do judgment-proof letters, if only living on Social Security work, I'm getting out of timeshares? So I I don't know if you went to a resort and said, I'm defaulting on this timeshare, and they would just let you out. I think sometimes they would. These are businessmen after all. They may try to encourage you more to try a different approach, but again, it's they're just crooks. Okay, so what
Steve,
else, Debbie?
Steve, we had another question, but before that, let me go through the tip sheet real quick. And
Okay.
Esther, if you could put that on, and then I know Lindsay had a question earlier than the one you probably saw, so we can open it up for discussion. But let me go through the list real quick. And I did mention several of the articles that Steve talked about, and I really hope you take a look at it, especially with what we're hearing about pig butchering and the growth of these forced to scam centers, starting in Southeast Asia, but spreading around the world. I had heard that they were spreading to places like Mexico. But when I saw these articles about people being killed, mostly younger people, and how many young people who speak English in Mexico are actually involved in doing both timeshare as well as other kinds of call center work, it was pretty astounding. And again, 8 people, their bodies recently found. So for those of you that may not have been on these calls before, I want to go through just real quickly. The first page of our tip sheet, I always include information, and I always try to put a plug in for Steve and his Baker fraud report. If you aren't on that weekly, please do that. He really does have trends and tips. And I know Tom on here forwarded it as a tip that he had this week that was helpful and showed up in the newsletter. So you guys can always, put your hot tips that you have to get it for inclusion in that. The National Elder Fraud Hotline, it's a wonderful resource to refer any older victim that's age 60 or older. They have a language line there. Unfortunately, due to the partial shutdown of the government, they are now closed. So that might not be the best referral to give people right now that are facing these kinds of problems. But normally when they're there, it's a great resource. So I wanted to mention that. I always include then the places to report these kinds of frauds. So as you can see, we always encourage people to file a report with the Internet Crime Complaint Center, ic3.gov. The reason for doing that are many. I always explain to my victims that I'm seeing that this is a library of complaints. Don't expect an FBI agent or other agent to come out right away, but at least it gets it into a national database so that if there is investigators locally or federally that might be working on that, it gives them some new leads that can be so critical. And again, in some cases, there's the RAT team and other teams that can help, that might be needing that information and using it to help recover money. So I mentioned all the different groups, the places to report for the different kinds of crimes. I also provided guidance on what the FBI requires or wants to get, and that would be whether you're dealing with Operation Shamrock, if you've got a pig butchering type case, or the FBI, if it's a crypto investment fraud, there's certain information and how things have to be filed. I always try to include now how to find a consumer law attorney. I'm seeing increasingly up against, especially things like banks and telecom companies and other kinds of things where there might be a lawsuit available. So I want people to be aware of that. And I also include the National Academy for Elder Law Attorneys because often there's issues of conservatorships and payees and bankruptcies and things like that they might need to get involved with. And then I included the IRS advice on taxing stolen money. So you all have that. I also include in every month the 4 national support groups that are available, as well as Kathy Wilson's wonderful videos for people that are victims of crime, talking about blame and shame. We did a series on the support groups last month, so I encourage you to go on to the past NAPSA website where they have actually, I think those were taped. But I encourage you to get your victims to be a part of those support groups if you can. And then I just wanted to focus real quickly, and unfortunately, I did not include the ARDA group, so you might want to add that to this resource list. But I do have some articles about assistance and warnings. The Federal Trade Commission has a wonderful article on timeshare scams that you can share with your clients, your victims. There's also an infographic that the FTC has put together. The FBI has some great information out there as well. And I would also encourage you to check with your local Attorney General's office because often they have some good information as well. I gave you a site just because California's had some really good information. And then finally, I wanted to mention the Coalition for Responsible Timeshare Exit. This is something you might want to take a look at. I have it listed there on the assistance and warnings. They actually have got a lot of the timeshare communities, management groups, and things like that that have gotten together to try to talk to people about safe and effective ways to not be scammed if you're involved in one of those timeshare exits. And they have some really good advice on that. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And then Steve already covered the cases, but I again urge you to take a look at those because I think you'll see that the tentacles of transnational fraud are definitely involved now in this industry. So I'll leave it at that, and then we can just go on with our questions. And I think, again, Steve, I think the first one we had was Lindsay. So Lindsay, if you want to ask your question. Is she there?
Share mute.
Lindsay? Okay, I think what her question was, what is a legitimate way to get out of a timeshare with or without a mortgage was her question. Steve, you want to tackle that one?
Well, I would reach out to the ARDA. Try to do it that way. If you don't have a mortgage on it and you're simply not interested in going anymore and don't want to pay the maintenance fees, I would try to call the resort directly. I would try to call the resort directly and tell them you want out and really be persistent about it. Obviously they don't want people who are just going to default on these things. So if people really can't afford it anymore, hopefully they would let them out. But I would try that. Somebody also had asked also if there's a list of legitimate attorneys that help people get out of timeshares, and I'm not aware of one. There could be that there's legitimate timeshare exit companies. I would be extremely cautious, and I would certainly check them out with the Better Business Bureau. The Better Business Bureau is not perfect. They are drawing the ratings they give for companies based on the reports they have, and some companies are pretty good about being deceptive even to the Better Business Bureau. So that's hardly definitive. But that's the best I can do. Sorry. We've got a hand up, Rosalie Ortiz.
Wesley, did you want to go ahead? I think you're unmuted. Maybe we can come back to them. Did you want to speak? Maybe they don't know that they have their hand up.
Okay.
I have one quick thought. When I was with the FBI as a victim specialist, I had a wonderful agent that was really tackling a couple really big timeshare cases that one was posing and pretending not to be out of Mexico, and the other one was. And unfortunately, I had a man that had almost $1 million stolen in one of these, and he was so stressed out about this, it ended up in him dying. He had a heart attack and was just so stressed, but the fact that he couldn't find anyone to help was just, I think, devastating. And the investigation on these things, of course, goes on sometimes for many months, if not years. And I think the stress of this was just so horrible for him. So often these are federal crimes. I really encourage you to get that IC3 report in and maybe even contact your local FBI about it, as well as your state attorney general, and have some hopes that these are being prosecuted. I know there's been these recent indictments, so I think it shows that there is an interest by the federal government in many jurisdictions to tackle these. And I think it's only going to increase, again, with the role of what we know is happening with these forced to scam centers around the world. I think Mexico is probably one of the next big places they'll be hitting.
Tom Lorenzo has apparently volunteered that he's got some recent experience with this area. And Tom, you want to talk about that, it sounds like?
Sure will. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm a volunteer with the Pasadena Police Department. We have 5 of us. We do financial crimes investigations. A couple of months ago, one of the Pasadena residents, elderly woman, contacted us filing a financial crime report that she had been scammed in a timeshare. It turns out she had several timeshares in Mexico. She was a little messy with her paperwork, wasn't too sure, and they were offering her a lot of money to sell it. What the investigation found was that the employees of one of the valid timeshares actually took the documents and started their own little gang and were contacting residents in the timeshare to fleece them. The victim also showed us documentation that the Mexican government had sent her, saying they were investigating these timeshares, and that if she sent them, this government lawyer, all the information, they would help her out. The only thing that saved this whole mess and got her out of it is one of my investigators is Hispanic, has a cousin in Mexico that is a high-ranking lawyer, and was able to go through the paperwork for us, was able to vet the person who said they were the government lawyer, was able to tell us everything that this was a scam, and we were able to educate our victim and literally tell her to throw the paper away, block the scammers' calls and emails. It was just a lot of luck, right person in the right place. But it's bad.
Very bad, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Tom. I think we had a couple other people maybe that want to discuss cases that they're maybe involved in. Lisa, Lisa Holy, do you want to share your case or your question about Wesley Financial? I should mention Wesley Financial. I hear it all the time with ads on the radio. So, you know, radio and TV ads can be horrible on these kinds of things. But I don't know anything specifically about Wesley, but if you want to ask your question, let's see if anyone else does.
I'm just trying to find out because I believe my father and stepmother are being scammed. They, under duress, signed up with a timeshare. It's their 3rd timeshare. They were able to get out of the first 2, signed up for the 3rd, and then were seeking assistance to get out of this timeshare. She went online, saw something on Facebook, and clicked on the link, and then connected with what we believe is a scam with this Wesley Financial. And they contacted the actual timeshare company, but they won't talk with them because they said, well, you're working with Wesley.
They're so convinced we have a scam program, and I'm actually a social worker, and Lifespan has a scam program, and the scam program has gone out and done a little research, and they think it's a scam, but even though they've shared this with them, they're so convinced that it's legitimate. They're sending $1,400 a month to this company, and I keep saying, I don't believe it's legitimate. You need to stop sending money. We're trying to get them out. We're trying to get them connected with an attorney, but we just keep hitting roadblocks of any way to get them out. And they're so immersed in this belief. They keep sending this money. So I'm like, I'm trying to give them something legitimate that they could maybe try to access some help to get them out so that they stop sending this money.
Lisa, my suggestion would be to try this Coalition for Responsible Timeshare Exit and at least take a look at that. It's a nonprofit group that's done by the trade industry or trade association, and it might be a first place to start for some guidance on that. Anyone else have experience with?
Yeah, there are a couple of other things you might do. One is to reach out to the state attorney general's office. Sometimes they're more responsive on these things, or there are state laws that apply. I don't know where Wesley Financial is out of. The other thing is you can do a Google search and just do Wesley Financial scam, see what comes up. And final thing is to go to the Better Business Bureau and see what they've got. Often Better Business Bureau offices actually know more than they put in their online reviews. I just a bit about the Better Business Bureau. When they get complaints, they send them off to the company for response. Sometimes the companies respond, sometimes they don't. And the people working at the Better Business Bureaus are not obviously responsive, don't understand all sorts of scams, and are not the most highly trained necessarily. And crooks like that, and sometimes the crooks also operate the same business under different names. So just to reiterate, the BBB is not perfect on that, but they're a pretty good source. And if you can read through the complaints and know what you're looking at, and if this operation has claimed, for example, that it is the kids are going to get stuck with timeshares, that's clearly an issue, and that was just damn false. So that might help you detect if they're crooked or not. $1,400 a month sounds like an awful lot of money to me over a period of several months for what little services these folks actually provide. So those are a couple thoughts.
And Lisa, I would share those things if there are complaints with the Better Business Bureau, and Trustpilot is another one I use. I print those out, or I show them to the person that I'm working with so that they can see those things. And they're probably not going to have that aha moment and go, okay, I believe it. But I think, it kind of builds the evidence that what you're saying is true and that it is something that maybe they shouldn't be trusting in. So it just helps to kind of break down that confidence they have in that company. So show them those things if you can.
Thank you. And will you be able to send the link, because you sent it in the chat box, but I'm not able to download it, that tip sheet that you're referencing. Will you be able to send that afterwards?
What they do, and Esther could probably do that, we post them every month. So all of our past months are on the NAPSA website. And Esther, maybe you can share where to find that on the NAPSA website. But we have, anytime that there's a taping, which there is this month, last month it was taped, and our tip sheets are always included every month on the NAPSA website.
Thank you.
And
So
I'll also send it out to the listserv after this. So if anyone is not already in the listserv, you can email, I'll put my email in the chat, and you can email me to be added into the listserv. But I think most of you are already on there. So yeah.
Esther, let me add the one list that Steve came up with. So I'll send you a new one on that, and we can add the ADA one.
Okay.
So that is awesome. That right after this is over. I know Laurel, I don't want to put you on the spot again, but if you can talk about your case in general. You said that you also have one of these. Is that something you can share with us?
I can if you can give me 2 minutes.
We can.
Okay. I'll be there in about 2 minutes.
All right. So until she can come on, yeah, Lisa said, the Wesley commercials all the time, and I can even almost mention, because I hear them so much, about we invented the timeshare exit model and others are imitating us, but you got to go with the real thing, and that's us. And I've always kind of wondered about them, but I wonder about anybody that's an ad on radio or TV personally. So yeah, I think that's a really huge red flag for some of those kinds of things. Anybody else have any quick questions before we hear from Laurel?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I came on late and I'm just curious. Can you tell me about the pig butchering? What did I miss?
Oh,
You want me to take a swing at that?
sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is I refuse. The crooks call them pig butchering. I refuse to. It's because it's crypto romance fraud is the term I employ. But basically, they're like romance frauds. They contact people and build a relationship over a period of time, and then they tell them that they have made a lot of money in crypto and that they can show people how to do a crypto investment too. So people then donate money into these, send crypto to the person they're dealing with, and the crooks provide them with an online account that they've actually got live customer service. It shows the crypto is appreciating in value. People think they're making a lot of money. Sometimes they send more money, and then, of course, you can never withdraw any of the money. You contact them, and they say, well, you got to pay money, more fresh money for taxes or commissions or whatever. But the result is, despite the fact that these apps look extremely good and very professional, they have just stolen your money at the outset. And this is probably the largest fraud in the world, most common one that's going on out there anywhere. And there are these huge compounds of people who've been kidnapped and forced to scam in Cambodia and Thailand and Myanmar, for example. And that's all they do is reach out to people every day and run these frauds. So that's a real thumbnail of what's going on with these things. But they're a huge issue, and and we definitely need to do more education about it.
Well, thank you
And
for
see,
explaining that. It's a metaphor. I thought it was literal. I was like, what have I missed?
yeah, those poor pigs are getting slaughtered. CL, you might want to go on the operationshamrock.org and fightcybercrime.org. They both have really good explanations of that crime. It's often called crypto investment confidence frauds or financial grooming. It's called various names, but those two sites will take you right to it, and you'll learn about the forced to scam centers. And just there's some real good resources, and we're going to cover those things in the future, and I think we've covered them in the past. Laurel, are you free now?
Thank you.
I am.
All right.
So
And
it's
then
funny.
I want to share, after you're done, we want to share what Tony found out as far as the timeshare exit company. So be ready,
great.
Tony. All right.
So it's funny, the last month's call, I think Steve had mentioned that we should do a thing on timeshare scams. And I remember thinking, gosh, I haven't heard of one of those in a long, long time. And I've learned I need to stop saying that to myself, because then all of a sudden a case pops up. We have had a doozy of one, older woman. She originally came in and sent a $20,000 wire, and the teller asked all the questions, and she had kind of a different story. It didn't even mention the word timeshare. And then she came back in and wanted a loan for $150,000. And that's when the word timeshare finally got used. So we were able to prevent that loan from happening by telling her that we only had the opportunity for a home equity line of credit, because we knew that if she then came and applied for the home equity line, that we could stall and do all kinds of things and not ultimately make the loan. We didn't want to make anything quick. because of that, she decided not to move forward with it. She went somewhere and either withdrew cash or got cash from another victim or did something, came back and deposited it and wanted to send another wire. So Debbie, I think you're familiar with the form I've been kind of playing with that is a takeoff of the postal inspector's knock and talk letter. So I customized it for these timeshare scams, and I listed the red flags and the boxes for her to check that, has anyone asked you to do X, Y, or Z? After and in there, I put language that we believe this transaction is associated with criminal activity and we cannot be a party to it. If you wish to move forward with the wire, you have to contact our risk officer. And that's how we do our escalations in the branches. They eventually send them to me. So after that happened, she freaked out, said she didn't want to send the wire anymore, said she found another way to get the money to them, but we cannot convince her. My fraud manager has spoken with her at least 3 times. And she said to her, look, you've all tried to convince me this is a scam. And whether or not it's a scam, it's my money and it's my decision to make. And I know these guys are legitimate. And we have not had any luck dissuading her, except to keep denying the transactions. But she does also bank with other banks, and we're concerned that she's going to cause problems. And when I heard that there's a case in Pasadena that's so nearby Santa Barbara, it gave me a little hope that maybe there'd be some willingness to do some joint collaboration here in, Ventura, LA counties. So I just throw that out there as a thought, because if it works to get law enforcement to talk to these victims, I would love to leverage that.
I can put you in touch with Tom if you wish. I can do that afterwards, if that would be
That
helpful.
would be awesome.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering if some of the consumer fraud divisions of DA's offices, we have a pretty active one in Ventura County, and maybe that's something that regionally they might be interested in, and then take that information to the FBI if it warrants it. Just a thought. That's often how these things happen. Yeah, thank you for that, Laurel. We were asked if you would share your handout of that letter that you made, but what I want to do is, that was a great preview. Laurel is going to be our speaker actually for our February NAPSA Scam Advice Forum. So let's wait until February and see what all she can share on what's, I think, some of the best practices happening in the banking industry. So keep your questions and all that for Laurel in February. All right. I think, is it Shauna? You had a question? Or, oh no, that was Rosalie still. All right, Tony, can you share what you found out when you pulled up the timeshare company, Wesley?
Well, I just Googled Wesley because I always hear about them on the radio and Sirius. They advertise all the time. And then the Better Business Bureau had a link. And I'm just about halfway down the link, and there's a whole bunch of complaints. They said they were going to have them out in like 9 months' time, and 3 years later, they're still not out of their timeshare, and they send them $1,100 a month. And then another one says they asked for $5,000 to continue after the client said we want to discontinue, and then they said, oh no, we changed our mind, we want to continue. So they asked for 5,000. So it sounds like they just ask for a lot of money and they don't get a lot of results. There's all of these say that they didn't get the results that they were promised. So that's all. I probably wouldn't do business with them. And maybe if you have someone who's involved with them, you could just show them all these complaints, and maybe that would convince them to quit.
Yeah.
The other thing that can work sometimes is tell them you're going to complain to the Better Business Bureau and the Federal Trade Commission and the Attorney General's office. A lot of fraud companies will make some refunds if you do that, because they don't want a big volume of complaints sitting out there that might spark law enforcement. So they've
Right.
even got scripts that said, okay, no refunds except if the person says that they're going to complain to the BBB-AG's office and the Attorney General's office, do give them a refund then. So that's always worth a try on these sorts of things.
Yeah. That's good, Steve. There is one on here. It's toward the beginning, so I'm not looking at it. They said that they were sent a refund and then right after they got their refund, they got a bill for the exact same amount. So they refunded and then they said they owed it back to them. So yeah,
Yeah, and
sketchy.
yet it's on Sirius, you know, and it's on other radio stations. It's crazy. Where's our campaigns to hold, again, these media companies responsible for the ads that they're allowing? It's crazy. I think I wanted to have something. Oh, Janice asked what the Postal Service's knock and talk letter is. That's a letter that was sent out by a lot of federal agencies and some police departments, and it's basically a money mule warning letter, where they will send out, they will go actually and talk to someone that might be an innocent victim of being a money mule, and usually romance kind of frauds or lotteries, those kinds of crimes. And they're given a warning letter saying that if we find that you are continuing this behavior of doing this, because they want to warn them that this, what they are doing is being a money mover. It provides that document that they are put on notice that that's what they're doing, so that if they're continuing that kind of behavior, they can actually be prosecuted, arrested for that crime. That's basically what these knock and talk letters are.
I might mention that this basically this similar business model of these timeshare exit people are used by tax resolution people. You've also all heard commercials of people that claim the IRS is cracking down, and if you've got unpaid taxes, they can help you resolve that situation. Um, a lot of those are huge crooks too. I mean, we had exactly the same model with one case we did at the Federal Trade Commission in Southern California, where they took massive amounts of people claiming they were going to resolve their tax issues and didn't. The reality is, at least with the IRS, I know the government's shut down right now, but the government has got the IRS is willing to work with people pretty good on that sort of stuff. Basically, if you offer them more and tax settlement than they think you would be able to pay, they will let you out of it. There's interest and penalties, and some of the IRS has got some discretion on what can be waived and what can't. But again, the tax resolution people are the same sort of model. They get a bunch of money up front, claim they're providing services to get people help with their taxes, and then do little or nothing and just spend the money as it goes in. So those are basically the same model. And I would say, I would never send anybody that you got to pay money for these tax resolution things, and too many people do. There have been some massive cases out there against them, but there really need to be more. There haven't been any in several years, and again, they advertise heavily, as somebody's just noticed as well.
I would love to see some kind of an attorney go after all these ads that are, on radio and television. I used to hear all the time about, buying and selling gold coins, and we had a gold coin case at the FBI, and I still hear those ads every day, which is how people got into it. And you're just going, this is crazy. Where at the same time we're trying to prosecute people, we've got people being enticed to do this. So thank you for that. Any other comments from anyone? We've got another 5 minutes or so, or we can just open it up to general chats. But I'm so glad that you're seeing this, because I think, oftentimes this is one of those invisible crimes that we don't think too much about, which is actually the kind of advantage that these criminals seek, and especially going after older adults that may not know how to get out of these kinds of things, or aren't maybe tech savvy enough to understand what's happening. And to be aware of the resources. And again, the more prosecutions being aware that there are people being prosecuted for these kind of crimes, and the influence of organized crime in it, I think is really important to know. Does anyone else have any comments before we close up?
The other thing, thank you for sharing all that information. This is Lisa again. So the other thing that they're saying is, they've blocked the call, they've blocked the numbers, and they continue to get new calls. And I keep saying to my dad, like, people are not just going to call you out of the blue. Like, there's a thread here, like, that that they continue to call you because I feel like they're just hooked and they know that they're giving them money. It's just troubling.
Other comments?
Should we just wrap it up? I mean, I've got a couple other things I've unfortunately got to do here today.
Just real quick, just a reminder, and we are meeting a week early in November, and then we are not going to be meeting in December at all. Just a heads up, I have a couple, I think, very interesting people coming up for January and February, and I'll let Steve give a preview of what's going on in November. But for January, we're going to be talking about kind of cognitive decline and kind of the physical aspects of this. And I have a really good, I think, neuropsychologist researcher that's going to share stories. And then we've got Laurel on for February. And Steve, if you want to give a preview of what's happening in November.
Sure. We've got a variety of frauds that all use websites, and for a variety of things. Often they're impersonating, for example, luxury goods or banks, and they use them as part of other frauds. There's a whole industry that develops these fake websites. And of course, a lot of the things we ask is, well, gee, it's a website. Why can't you just shut it down? Turns out that's more complicated than you would think it is. There's a whole industry of hosting and et cetera on that. So I've got a friend in South Africa who's a volunteer on a lot of these fake websites, for example, the ones used for non-existent pets. And I think it would be useful to explain how this whole industry of fake websites works. What are the challenges for law enforcement in trying to close them down, and who's behind developing them, and what kind of things they're using them for. So Derek is going to join us next month, and he's gone in depth with those, and he's talked extensively with the hosting companies and the domain name registrars, and I think everybody would get a little bit out of understanding how this whole industry of websites works.
It's good. And I had a question asking if the FCC.gov, I actually was on that website because I have a SIM card fraud I'm dealing with. Yes, FCC.gov, it's still, I don't know that it's operational during the shutdown. They say they weren't taking new complaints, but it's definitely still a federal government operation. Yeah, you need to go, if you go on the websites, they actually will tell you whether they're taking new complaints or not, but usually their information is still there, if that's helpful. So thank you all. Esther, you have anything else you want to add?
No, you guys added everything. Thank you guys for joining us. Hope you have
Bye-bye,
a great
everybody.
weekend. Bye.
Thank you.